A machine signed the papers. A robot wielded presidential power. And for months, maybe years, nobody knew. And what if I told you the biggest constitutional crisis in American history happened right under your nose? What if every pardon, every executive order, every official document from the previous administration was a lie? The signatures were fake, the authority was stolen, and the criminals who orchestrated the coup are still walking free. But not for long. Congress has the subpoenas ready, the whistleblowers are talking, and the names being exposed will shock you to your core. This is not a conspiracy theory. This is documented fact. The Autopen scandal is real. And when you learn who is really running America, your blood will boil. The truth starts now. And while Biden's Autopen signed away America's future, something else has been signing away your masculinity, and it's probably in your kitchen right now. Most guys blame age or genetics for low testosterone, but the real culprit is supposedly a healthy food that's destroying your hormones. Just like the Autopen scandal, the truth will shock you. This hidden testosterone killer, it drains your energy and motivation faster than unelected bureaucrats drain the treasury. But there is hope. Cutting this one food can transform your vitality like Trump's transforming Washington. So head over to sculptnation.com/NNN to discover what it is. That's sculptnation.com/NNN to reclaim your strength. Okay, we've got a lot to break down because the Autopen scandal, it is not going away. It is only getting started. And we're going to be tracking this. Everyone's tracking this. I got this clip here. We just pulled it from Patrick Bet-David. They published this a couple days ago.
Ready for this?
Yeah.
Is the Autopen allowed for pardons? No. It is not constitutionally allowed for presidential pardons. Why? Because the U.S. Constitution requires the president to be present. He was in a different state on vacation. Article 2, Section 2 grants the president the power to issue pardons, does not explicitly state the method. However, legal scholars' past interpretations argue the pardons require the personal discretion and direct approval of the president, meaning Autopen is not fulfilled in this requirement.
Is this the one with Barry Weiss that he was never present? And
ready for this?
Yeah.
Is the Autopen allowed for pardons?
This is only the beginning. So there is some big news that broke today. It was all over the web. I'm going to pull that clip for you right now. Pocahontas, they actually, let's see, where is that clip? I've got it here. So much to unwrap. Okay, let's see. Okay, let's go to this. Representative Comr swinging the hammer of justice. When you sign a legal document, it has to be signed personally. It cannot be signed by Autopen. This scandal is way bigger than Watergate. Here is Trish Reagan weighing in.
Actually goes through. Unbelievable. And now it's caught the attention of the Oversight Committee in Congress. And now James Comr, Representative James Comr, is demanding an investigation. And I'll tell you, I'm just going to tell you right now, if this actually goes through, there's going to be some heads that really roll. I mean, think about all those pardons. Those pardons will be null and void. Think about all the decisions that Biden made, a few too many, that maybe he didn't make, that would then be null and void. We'll get into the legal complications of all this. But first, here is Representative Comr speaking last night.
Say that, no, they just talked to Joe Biden, and he was tip-top. He was in great physical condition. He was at the top of his game. Now they're coming back covering the track saying, yeah, it looks like he was in mental decline. Well, we all know he's in mental decline. What we need to know is who was calling the shots at the White House. And one thing that was also mentioned on your show thus far is that when you sign a document that has legal implications, it has to be signed personally. It can't be signed by an Autopen. You use Autopen for proclamations and mass letters and things like that. So I think that if we can understand more about the Autopen and whether or not Joe Biden authorized it, I think this could lead to a lot of those executive orders being kicked out in court.
Wow. All right. This is bigger than Watergate for sure. Okay, I'm trying to find the clip that we had lined up for you here. This was posted a day ago. President Trump exposes the rigged 2020 election and the Autopen scandal. All pardons done through Autopen should be invalid. Joe Biden wasn't cognizant. We want arrest. That's what MAGA Voice posts. Other than the rigged presidential election of 2020, the biggest scandal in American history is the Autopen. Whoever used it was usurping the power of the presidency, and it should be very easy to find out who that person or persons is. They did things that they did things that a Joe Biden of sound mind would have never done, like open borders, transgender for everyone, men and women's sports, and far more. Fear not, however, we will bring America back bigger, better, and stronger than ever before. This is big on Trump's radar. He brought it up in the Oval Office.
Pens. I'm just thinking, as you're saying that, I just said, what about Autopens? Could I use an Autopen? What did Biden do? Did he have an Autopen at the desk?
Nuclear power.
No, he didn't do events like this. Yeah, he used nuclear power. You know, he didn't do events like this, I guess. That's all right. Otherwise, you know, you walk into the other side of the room, have an Autopen sign it, right? Here it is. It's phase one. Very big phase, very important phase.
Here is, this is an important flashback. Kyle Becker posting, this is an important flashback to consider with the Biden Autopen situation. House Speaker Mike Johnson previously revealed an alarming conversation with Biden in which the president seemed completely unaware of signing an executive order halting LNG exports.
Sir, why did you pause LNG exports to Europe? Like, I don't understand, you know, liquefied natural gas is in great demand by our allies. Why would you do that? Because you understand, we just talked about Ukraine. You understand you're fueling Vladimir Putin's war machine because they got to get their gas from him, you know. And he looks at me stunned with this, and he said, I didn't do that. And I said, Mr. President, yes, you did. It was an executive order, like, 3 weeks ago. And he goes, no, I didn't do that. And he's arguing with me. I said, Mr. President, respectfully, could I go out here and ask your secretary to print it out? We'll read it together. You definitely did that. And he goes, oh, you talk about natural gas. Yes, sir. He said, no, you misunderstand. He said, what I did is I signed this thing we're gonna conduct a study on the effects of LNG. I said, no, you're not, sir. You paused it. I know. I have the export terminals in my state. I talked to those people this morning. This is doing massive damage to our economy, national security. It occurred to me, Barry, he was not lying to me. He genuinely did not know what he had signed. And I walked out of that meeting with fear and loathing because I thought, we're in serious trouble. Who is running the country? Like, I don't know who put the paper in front of him.
Okay, so, yeah, he doesn't know who put the paper in front of him. Okay, here's Lindy Lee. She is a Democrat that's blowing the whistle. Over the past 4 years, we didn't have a president. We had a cabal of unelected presidents, including Jill Biden. We had a secret group of hacks running the most powerful nation in the world, a gang of Biden loyalists wielding the Autopen.
And Anita Dunn point, because I want to talk about that doctor. You know who that doctor was? Kevin O'Connor. This is a family business associate. He had a financial interest in propping up the Biden regime, and that is a fundamental problem here. People lied about his cognitive decline because they wanted power. Let's be perfectly honest about that. Exactly. Jill Biden, and I will name the names. Jill Biden, Steve Ricchetti, Mike Donnellan, Anita Dunn, Anthony Bernal. These were Jeff Zients. These were the people running our country. We had a council of presidents for the past 4 years. We didn't have an elected president. We had these unelected hacks who understood that Biden was our final gravy train, that as soon as he went off into the sunset, they were done. So they wanted to drag this on for forever.
Let's keep going. There's more here. Here on Lindell TV, cybersecurity expert warns of Biden Autopen scandal, no accountability, and no transparency. Nate Kane, I was a guest on his show a couple months ago. He says Biden's use of the Autopen to sign executive orders and pardons poses a serious national security risk. Who is actually authorizing these actions?
You have some insight to add.
You signed important documents by Autopen.
Did in fact sign in.
He signs by Autopen. Who was signing all this stuff by Autopen? Who would think you signed important documents by Autopen? You know, these are major documents you're signing. You're proud to sign them. You have your signature on something. In 300 years, they say, oh, look, can you imagine? Everything was signed by Autopen, almost everything. Nobody's ever heard of such a thing.
He raises some really important questions, which you dug into these questions, right, Nate?
Yes. So my background is 27 years in cybersecurity, and that is where I kind of constantly look at from a standpoint of risk. Two of those things in that regards is authentication, which is guaranteeing that the person who says they are who they are is the person who in fact signed or logged in or did some sort of action. That's something that we look at. Another one, though, is non-repudiation, which non-repudiation is basically when you have the ability to guarantee that this person did in fact sign in and it wasn't somebody else that signed it. They can't claim that it was somebody else that signed it. That's so important in the executive branch, because when you think about it, right, what are they doing? At the end of the day, who does the buck stop with? It stops with the President of the United States. We have a singular executive. So it's important that we know who it was that was giving the orders, who it was that was doing, signing the documents, signing the executive orders, signing the pardons. And the fact is, with Autopen, we have very little of that. We have very little transparency at all. And so I would argue that Autopen should not be used on any kind of major documents at all. The president should have to sign those things. And if he's going to delegate that, that delegation should be in writing by his hand. I delegate this person to do this for me on these specific matters. Almost like you're providing a trusted document that is going to say that this person's authorized for this period of time.
Like a power of attorney. He's talking about chain of custody with respect to the authorization. I mean, does that even exist? Now, here's the clip that Jesse Waters presented. He had David Sachs on his show just 24 hours ago. And he said that Pocahontas had the Autopen.
This is the financial system of the future, Jesse, and we have to encourage it. What the Biden administration was doing, and let's face it, it wasn't Biden. Elizabeth Warren controlled the Autopen during that administration. She, for some reason, has this pathological hatred of the crypto community. She wants to drive this community offshore. She doesn't want it happening in the United States. That's the wrong policy for the United States. We want all the innovation happening here. This is a financial system of the future.
I mean, he just kind of says it in passing, but this is what caught everybody off guard today.
That administration. Elizabeth Warren controlled the Autopen during that administration.
Okay, so there's that. Here's Dinesh D'Souza. Biden's use of the Autopen is not the real scandal. The real scandal is that someone else was running the country.
Discovery. I think the key here for Trump is to push this into court and demand discovery. And I say this because the current defense that people are making of Biden is that, well, so what if he signed the pardons with an Autopen? You're allowed to do presidential signatures with an Autopen. This, I think, is a deflection and diversion from the real issue. The real issue is not the Autopen. Of course, the president can sign with an automatic pen. The issue is, was Biden mentally cognizant when he signed or when he authorized the use of the Autopen? That's the issue, and that is an issue that demands discovery. Now, we already have in the Congressional record, I see it right here, February 14, 2024, the quotation from the special counsel, Robert Hur, that Biden is too far gone, too non-compos mentis, too forgetful and senile to be able to stand trial. Well, if he's too forgetful to stand trial, that means he's really not in command of his faculties. I think the interesting thing about forcing the issue on this and demanding discovery is you get all kinds of information about who was really running the U.S. government for the past 4 years. This is something that Democrats do not. They don't want this can of worms, this Pandora's box. They don't want to lift the screen on this scandal, and it is a major scandal, and was done with, I think, widespread knowledge on the part not only of people in the administration and the White House, because there were cabinet officials who knew that cabinet meetings didn't really happen. There were leaders in Congress who knew that they could never get through to Biden. There was just a handful of aides who intercepted all the communications. So this, to me, is the scandal behind the scandal. It's not just about the pardons. It's really about which gang of unelected thugs, which junta has been running the country from 2020 to 2024.
Okay, there's a clip here from Stephen Miller. You got to see, too. Well, this is just as good.
President of the United States. I was often asked, who's really the president of the United States? And I would always tell them the truth. Whoever has control of that teleprompter. And you might amend it by saying whoever had control of the Autopen. I was often...
Whoever had control of the Autopen. Here's Trump's U.S. pardon attorney Ed Martin telling Benny Johnson that Biden's Autopen mass pardons are now under investigation.
Pipe bomb. Fake news that you made a ton of news with earlier in the week, talking about this fake world that we live in, whether it's Pipe Bomber or the nooses, or maybe Joe Biden's Autopen. is it legal for a president to do such heavy lifts in Article 2 with a computer and with his staff when the president isn't even he's not even in the country, right? When half these pardons are signed. Is this legal?
Well, Benny, just to say, President Trump is really, I'm obviously, I admire him, but he's also very kind because the pardon attorney, which is what I am also, I'm serving as the United States pardon attorney, is a really unique spot, and you go back in history, even way back in the Federalist Papers, I think it was number 74. It turns out, I think it was Hamilton was writing about the power of the pardon is something that, can restore tranquility to the Commonwealth is the phrase that he used. It's a really unique thing. President Trump has done it well. He's been very careful. Alice Johnson is the pardon czar. Actually, she's in the White House, and she's someone who has a great story. It's a kindness, right? It's real. It's important, and it's in the Constitution. But I will say, and I've said it over and over, when something, as a prosecutor, when something is so unprecedented, it's a reason to take a look. It may not be probable cause to arrest people yet. It may not even be probable cause to subpoena things or to do sort of seizures. But when you see something that's outrageous and unprecedented, it's a reason to look. It's outrageous and unprecedented for Joe Biden to do these pardons for over a decade, blanket pardons, not blanket pardons as to, when you did this, you're pardoned on everything related to it, which is normal. It's anything you thought of or did back for years and years and years. By the way, Comey has, I think Comey got a pardon. Forgive me if I forget, but if he got a pardon, what he did today is not covered by the pardon. What he did yesterday is not covered, just to be clear. So, but what I'm saying is this. When you see something so unprecedented, it looks like everybody who is touching a major scandal that may or may not have had corruption involved, COVID, Ukraine, they all got pardons. Hunter Biden got pardons. He touched China, all this. You say, wait a second, is there something going on here? And then you say the Autopen, where now, Jake Tapper is saying that Biden was so gone that they were clearly not paying, he wasn't running things. You start to get to a point where you say, was somebody manipulating things, right? We know these people like Anita Dunn and Ron Klain, and those people were dominant figures in Biden world. Were they the ones doing the pardons? And if they were, then we've got a question that we have to about the validity. So we're going to get into this. I value pardons so much, and I value our Constitution. We want to be respectful of the history, but we also want to make sure the conduct now was appropriate. And the combination of the Autopen and the unprecedented nature, and people like Jake Tapper now describing so clearly a diminished human being, there's some questions that have to be taken up, and we're going to do it.
We are going to do it. Here is future Governor Byron Donalds of Florida says Joe Biden's Autopen is the biggest scandal in American history and calls out Kamala Harris for playing a part.
Throughout the director, when you think about the scale of this scandal, where do you think it will go down, and how do you think people will remember the Biden presidency now that we know how cognitively he was throughout the duration of his 4 years?
The Autopen scandal is going to be the biggest scandal in American history, bigger than Watergate, bigger than Iran-Contra, bigger than anything else, because you had the deep state Democrat oligarchs running this country and not somebody who was quote unquote elected. You simply can't have it. That's not the way the United States of America is allowed to operate. And my number one question is, Kamala Harris, what did you know and when did you know it? Where have you been? What were you doing? Because it is the vice president's responsibility, as well as the cabinet, to alert the American people to an inability of the commander-in-chief to do his job.
Sir, when you think about
this is only the beginning. You can see it right there. I mean, we've been covering this for weeks now. And with the congressional subpoenas, it's only going to get deeper and deeper. Carrie Bonet, 14 hours ago. Take a guess who gets to deliver the subpoenas. Janine Pirro.
There's a deadline to this. So there's a ramp for Joe Biden and several key staffers. They may all face subpoenas if they do not comply by tomorrow. So now there's a deadline to this. So there's a ramp up now by Republicans. In a social media post, President Trump wrote, "Whoever had control of the Autopen is looking to be a bigger and bigger scandal by the moment." Aisha Hasni reporting in Washington. Aisha.
Hey, good morning to you, Harris. So that's right. Oversight Committee Chairman Comr tells me that his committee is ready to drop those subpoenas within minutes if former President Biden's doctor and those 4 other staffers do not respond to his request for an interview by tomorrow's deadline. Comr is also telling me that he's willing to expand those summons to include former First Lady Jill Biden, their son, Hunter Biden, and former Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre, if that is where the committee's investigation leads them.
Obviously, we're interested in the Jean-Pierre. We're interested in people like Ian Sams. We're also interested in Jill Biden and Hunter Biden. So, but first step is bring these lower level employees in. We believe these employees that most people have never heard of had a huge amount of influence in the use of the Autopen.
So several folks from Biden's Oval Office inner circle have stayed quiet amid the cover-up allegations, but they're still active out there. Ron Klain is now Airbnb's chief legal officer. Anita Dunn now works with the super PAC Future Forward. Mike Donnellan is a Harvard fellow, and Bob Bauer teaches at NYU Law. And we're told that don't rule these people out as well. They could also be interviewed. If the committee does find any wrongdoing in their investigation, Harris, and Chairman Comr says that he would send criminal referrals to AG Pam Bondi. So stay tuned. Harris.
We will. Aisha, thank you. Jason Chaffetz, now Fox News contributor, former Utah congressman, who also chaired the House Oversight Committee, which is leading this effort now. This feels like it's right on time. Keep the press on. Your take.
Yeah, Chairman Comr is doing this the right way. You got to bring in the underlying employees. You start getting them on the record under oath, telling us who, how, who authorized this, who was allowed to put in it, who was in the chain of custody of these documents. It is the most powerful thing you have, the signature of the President of the United States.
Yeah.
And I want to highlight something. The pardon for the Biden family is distinctly different. I have looked at all of these, and I am telling you that looks like Joe Biden personally signed the ones for his family, but so many of these others, literally thousands of pardons and other documents, appear to all be on an Autopen. So who authorized that? Comer's going to figure that out.
So that's so interesting because you would know about this device. I've been doing some research. Barack Obama reportedly used an Autopen to sign the Patriot Act extension while he was traveling in France. That was in 2011. And we know that it's been used by other presidents. But what you're saying is there's a way to tell the difference?
Yeah, you can look at the signatures itself, and you want to go through, and the staffers that were put up on the screen, those really are highlighted. The other thing that's different than, for instance, when I was chairman, is you have a president in Donald Trump who actually wants justice, and the one to actually enforce, if the subpoena, you're only as good as your subpoena as your ability to enforce it. The person who would be in charge of actually enforcing that subpoena would be the U.S. Attorney for the District of Columbia, who is Jeanine Pirro. And if anybody thinks that she's going to be bashful in not prosecuting and enforcing these subpoenas, oh my goodness, they haven't met her yet.
No. But we know her well, and what we do know about the situation, too, it's so interesting. Look at the timing of her coming on board now. And this is now really heating up, and Republicans are leaning in. I know I've been wanting, from the journalist perspective, as we hear all these books dropping and everything else, how can you not want more information? And we as journalists can only do so much. Congress can do more, and the Justice Department for Joe Biden.
The Justice Department will. Okay, where's that Stephen Miller clip I've got here for? Okay, we got more from Ed Martin, too. Okay, let's go here.
Looks about, we've never seen pardons of the scope, and it looks at least like something that you could be corrupt. When Bill Clinton pardoned Mark Rich, and turns out that Mark Rich had paid a boatload of money to one of Clinton's friends, lawyers, that's not corrupt, it's not criminal, because the plenary power of the pardon. But in the case of Joe Biden and his pardons, they were so specific, back 14 years, covering everything you've ever done. And when I say specific, they were broad, but they had time stuff on them. It was and that at least leads to questions, because the plenary power is true, but the question is what was going on here, and I did get responses from some of them, and those things are ongoing. Okay, where is that Stephen Miller clip? My goodness.
There's so many clips here. I apologize for. Okay. Oh, here. Okay. Here's the other one. This is the Project Veritas, the clip that just dropped about David Hogg admitting that Jill Biden's people essentially ran the White House. Of course, that's not really a secret, but we're talking about who's controlling the Autopen. I'm sure Jill Biden knows exactly who.
The big yes.
Nice to meet you. Yeah.
Off the record, of course.
Foundational question for me is like, how corrupt is the DNC if so many people knew, or few people knew about Biden, well, the president of the United States?
I mean, I think the fact of the matter is the DNC is always going to be like a campaign arm of the president, ultimately. The bigger issue is like the inner circle that was around Biden. That's it. And I can't stress to you enough, like Joe Biden's chief of staff, like had an enormous amount of power.
Joe Biden?
Joe Biden's chief of staff.
That was
like an open secret at the level. Like, I would avoid him. Like, he was scary.
What was his name?
Anthony Dunn.
I've never seen him.
Exactly.
What do you mean?
He's like a shadowy, like, Wizard of Oz type figure. That's what made him so, like, I knew how he looked, but I'm like, the general public wouldn't know how this man looked. But he wielded an enormous amount of power, and I can't stress to you how much power he had at the White House.
Okay, I found some other clips that we wanted to play for you guys. Here is Senator Ron Johnson. Says 28 former Biden administration officials with frequent access to Biden have been invited to answer questions about the Autopen, and that list may expand.
We've invited, and clearly they were lying to us. Listen, I think the American people deserve to know exactly what was happening, who was calling the shots, who's using the Autopen. Right now, we've invited 28 former administration officials, people that should have had, if not daily, but very frequent access to President Biden. That list may expand as news reports indicate other people might have been quite influential as well. So again, we're inviting them at this point in time. I think it'll be a relatively short list of questions that we're going to be asking them initially. But it depends on what we hear from people, see what kind of contradictions there are. It's illegal to lie before Congress, and so hopefully we'll actually get the truth out of these individuals.
Senator, where does the former First Lady, Dr. Jill Biden, fall into all of this?
Well, I don't believe we've put her on the list yet. Again, we're going to be talking about governmental officials, those folks first. But again, this is a voluntary ask right now. Hopefully we won't have to subpoena anybody, but we may take it to that level if we have to. And clearly they were lying.
Okay, I found the Stephen Miller clip, but I want to point out the cover up here. 3 of President Biden's top aides, Deputy Chief of Staff Anthony Bernal, Deputy Chief of Staff Annie Tomasini, and Senior Advisor Ashley Williams have until tomorrow. Okay, this was posted 11 hours ago. Have until tomorrow to agree to testify about their knowledge of the Autopen pardons and who is actually running the show. Okay, so we're gonna track this because tomorrow is the day they have to answer to these subpoenas. This post, it was reported Joe Biden signed off on $2.5 billion of aid in Ukraine while he was vacationing in St. Croix. At the same time, the pardons were being signed not by Joe Biden, another Autopen signing. Who signed off on the $2.5 billion? Where did the money go? So, Autopens signing documents while Joe Biden's on vacation. Now this is the clip. I'm getting it now.
Oh, that something was. It's not just that the pardons were signed with an Autopen. It's that clearly the former president, Joe Biden, had absolutely no awareness of or any clue about what was being signed in his name when he's on a beach in Delaware doing God knows what. In other words, you have all these instances where you can show that something was signed by an Autopen when Joe Biden was not even physically present, aware, around at all. And so the accumulation of evidence makes clear that Joe Biden had no awareness, no knowledge, no participation, and frankly, in the administration of government for 4 years, but in particular, in this case, with respect to these pardons, which then means, of course, the Department of Justice has its own authorities to pursue as it sees fit. It's not just that.
Do you guys see where this is going? I mean, it's time for some serious accountability, and it's long overdue. I want to see if there's anything else I'm missing here, because I just want to make sure I get it all. I want to cover it all, make sure you guys have all the information. Okay, here's more. President Trump states this was treason at the highest levels. It appears the Autopen was used by Ron Klain, Anita Dunn, and Bob Bauer. I have a high-ranking Biden official come forward. Weaponization Director Ed Martin.
That Joe Biden, the president, if you were with us on the morning meeting, you saw, talked at length, 2 stops before he went into the meeting with the House conference, talked to the media, and he talked a lot about this issue of the Autopen. All presidents use Autopen, but there seems to be a sense in the Trump administration that Joe Biden, and this is something Ed I think is working on, that Joe Biden used the or people used the Autopen to sign things on Joe Biden's behalf, including pardons that may be not legally, constitutionally permissible if it wasn't actually the president and it was some robot or whatever you call the Autopen. So here's number 3. This is a Truth Social post from the president about this topic. And again, he talked about it at length this morning. Joe Biden was not for open borders. He never talked about open borders. We're criminals of all kinds. All right, blah, 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 go through the process. It was the people that knew he was cognitively impaired and took that, and that took over the Autopen. They stole the president of the United States and put us in great danger. This is treason at the highest level. So, Ed, where did this start, this notion that the Autopen was improperly used, and what evidence have you seen for the president's accusation?
Well, I'll make a little news for you, Mark, here. I was in the office as U.S. Attorney for about 5 days when I wrote to a number of senior Biden officials in the White House saying, what did you know about Joe Biden's competence and the pardons? And I got some responses. And so I've been looking at this for a while. Again, I think that the question is more about competence. If you have someone who's not competent, they can't enter into a contract, right? And if you do enter into a contract, you've committed fraud. The question is whether you use a tool to trick people into entering into a fraud. So the Biden pardons are unprecedented. The ones right before Christmas that he did, people forget this. I think it's a couple thousand pardons that were done. Did he know about that? Did he really understand? Look, the pardon power is plenary, but the guy has to be competent to do it. Now you come forward to this question broadly of the Autopen. Autopen's completely obviously legal if you're competent. And there must be a trail that shows who was in charge of the Autopen. I know this exists. Like, I worked for a governor. We had a system for an Autopen to be able to use it. And so right now we have unprecedented conduct, the pardons, unprecedented admissions, the books as well as the staffers. I had a whistleblower in my office 10 days ago, senior Democrat, saying, look, it was these 3 people that controlled access and they were making money off of it. I don't know if I believe it yet, but the point is, I think we have to get to the bottom of it for the American people and to protect the process, and that's what we're doing. And by the way, make it all the way to the bottom. It may not be criminal, but it certainly should be a scandal of the first order, maybe in human history or maybe American history. I sound like the president there, but in American history to have this kind of conduct.
Ed, I'm from Maryland, not North Carolina, so I'm not that bright. Did I miss what the news was? You said you'd make news. What was the news you made?
The news was that nobody knows until that I was writing to these folks at the U.S. Attorney's Office, and including the Biden family. I don't think anybody has seen that. So my point is, I'm bragging about being there early. Everybody got to this 120 days later.
Did they reply, or you just sent them letters?
No, they didn't.
What'd they say?
A couple of them lawyered up, and one of them wrote directly. I won't talk about what they said.
And can you and you probably won't tell us, but can you characterize who the whistleblower was? It someone who worked in the Biden White House?
Biden campaign, 2020 campaign at the highest levels.
2020, and who are the 3 people they said were doing this for money?
This is the one who's let me say it carefully. Yeah. The gatekeepers. Different characterization of who was using the access, but the gatekeepers were Klain and Anita Dunn and Bob Bauer, and those 3 were really dominant characters in the White House. Ricchetti a little bit, and obviously Jill, but I think that was the 3. I was with this person, and I said, "What about Susan Rice? What about some of these others?" And they said, "No, these were the ones."
Okay, I will politely and gently tell you his name is.
Sorry about that. Okay. I mean, what can you say? This is the biggest scandal in American history. The investigation is happening, and if this makes your blood boil, hit subscribe. We're going to be following this. Hit it immediately, and I'm going to give you my closing thoughts right now. So the Autopen scandal, it's treason. It's plain and simple. While Joe Biden drooled in Delaware, unelected staffers wielded presidential power through a robot signature. Elizabeth Warren, Ron Klain, Anita Dunn, Bob Bauer, these names should live in infamy. Every pardon that they signed is constitutionally void. Every executive order is illegitimate. Fauci's pardon? Fake. Milley's pardon? Fraudulent. The January 6th pardons? Completely unconstitutional. Trump calls it the biggest scandal in American history after the rigged 2020 election. He's right. This is worse than Watergate. At least Nixon was actually president when he committed crimes. These people stole presidential authority while the real president was mentally gone. Matt Gaetz says it's just the beginning. Criminal referrals are coming. Prison sentences must follow. So here's my question. Should everyone who used Biden's Autopen face treason charges? Simple yes or no in the comments below. The Constitution demands justice. Grab your next news gear and join the fight for accountability. You'll find the link down below.